Okay, here's a huge idea to chew on. What if the Enlightenment, the whole foundation of modern reason and liberty, was actually based on a catastrophic mistake? In this explainer, we're going to dig into that really powerful argument and explore what it might take to finally, well, finish the job. So, our story really kicks off with this fascinating paradox. It's about a project that was all about liberation, but somehow it just turned on itself.
So let's go back in time. Picture this. It's Paris, 1793. We're right at the height of the French Revolution, and this radical experiment in human freedom is in full swing. And the symbolism here is just wow. Inside the famous Notre Dame Cathedral, they didn't just get rid of the king. Oh no. They were aiming higher. They tried to dethrone God himself, and in his place, they put up this new deity with a capital R, reason.
But here's where that paradox I mentioned really hits you. The incredible promise of liberty, it just soured into the brutal reality of the terror. I mean, this whole project was supposed to get rid of old, rigid dogmas, right? But instead, it just created brand new ones. And they came with their own saints, their own rituals, and chillingly, the guillotine, a shockingly efficient machine for execution. And this is the absolute key to understanding what went wrong. They didn't actually abolish the idea of the sacred. They just moved it. Think about it. By ripping out society's transcendent foundation, they created this huge vacuum. And vacuums, well, they don't stay empty for long. Into that void rushed these new absolutes. The nation, the party, history itself. And these new secular gods, they demanded the exact same total submission as the old one.
So that leads us to the big question, right? How on earth did this happen? What was the fundamental mistake they made? Okay, but first, let's be super clear about something. The Enlightenment thinkers, they weren't wrong about the disease. Not at all. They correctly saw that fusing religious authority with political power, where kings rule by divine right and saying the wrong thing about religion could get you killed, was incredibly dangerous. Their diagnosis? Totally spot on. The mistake, and this is what we're calling the historic category error, was that they confused the corrupt institution with the very idea it claimed to represent. They looked at all the terrible abuses of the church and they decided that transcendence itself must be the problem. They thought, hey, if we just get rid of that, pure human reason alone will be enough to build a moral society. Big mistake. See, the problem was never God. The problem was the human institution that claimed it owned God. The danger wasn't a belief in some kind of higher moral order. The real danger was a human organization claiming it had the only correct interpretation of that order, and then using that claim to put itself above any and all criticism. And the writer Dostoevsky, he totally saw where this was all going. When he wrote, "Without God, everything is permitted," that wasn't him cheering for freedom. Not at all. It was a really stark warning about what happens when you completely remove any ultimate foundation for what's right and what's wrong. Because like we said, that vacuum of meaning, it never stays empty. As soon as the transcendent was pushed out, these new secular forces rushed in to claim absolute authority. And this didn't lead to liberation, far from it. It actually paved the way for the totalitarian nightmares and just the unbelievable violence of the 20th century. But what if there was another way? Another path that was there all along, a tradition that lets us avoid this false choice between, on the one hand, a corrupt institution, and on the other, a completely groundless atheism. Well, it turns out there is one. This idea of separating God from any kind of institutional control, it's not new at all. In fact, it's this ancient cross-cultural lineage of thinkers who all basically argued that reason itself could be a pathway to the divine. Let's take Socrates, for example. He's kind of the prototype here. People think of him as this radical, but he wasn't an atheist. He was a philosopher who truly believed that moral knowledge, what he called virtue, was something you could actually discover for yourself, just through rigorous, honest questioning. And that is exactly why the powers that be in Athens saw him as such a threat. See, his real crime wasn't that he didn't believe in the divine. It was his insistence that you didn't need the official gatekeepers, the priests and the rituals, to access it. He was a direct threat to the institution's monopoly on truth. Okay, now let's jump forward about 2,000 years. You have Thomas Jefferson doing something that is remarkably Socratic. He literally takes a razor to the Bible, and he physically cuts out every miracle, every supernatural claim, all to isolate what he believed was its pure, rational, moral core. And Jefferson's contemporary, Thomas Paine, he put the same idea even more bluntly. For Paine, the only true scripture was the natural world itself. That beautiful, mathematical order of the universe, that was God's revelation, and it was open to anyone with the reason to see it. No priest, no church, no institution required.
Okay, so if we build on this incredible and often suppressed tradition, what would a Second Enlightenment actually look like in practice? All right, first things first, let's be crystal clear about what this is not. This is not a call to go back to institutional religion. It is definitely not about creating some new, organized religion. And, this is so important, it is not moral relativism. The argument here isn't that objective truth doesn't exist, it's that no single human institution gets to claim ownership of it.
So what is it then? Well, a Second Enlightenment is really more like a set of personal commitments. It's a deep commitment to rigorous reason combined with a serious engagement with the transcendent. It's all about the personal pursuit of objective moral truth without ever outsourcing that quest to some authority that just demands your blind faith. And this whole discussion brings us right into the present day. Because, look, this isn't just some abstract historical argument. It's a really urgent and very much unfinished challenge for all of us. Here's the mission, laid out plain and simple. Can we learn to think about God without the priest? Can we pursue moral truth without the inquisitor breathing down our necks? Can we take that deep human hunger for meaning and order seriously without just handing it over to the institutions that have, time and again, hijacked it for their own power? So, to wrap it all up, the First Enlightenment did something truly incredible. It gave us freedom from the tyranny of unaccountable authority. But it kind of left that freedom just floating on nothing, without a solid foundation. So the great unfinished challenge, the question for us, is this. Can a Second Enlightenment finally give our freedom the foundation it needs, one that is both rational and real?